Hello, invisible audience! Today I'm going to be setting up my bullet journal for May. My theme for this month is a honeybee themed scrapbooky kind of thing. The colors that I'm using primarily are like light pinks and soft yellows, so it feels very springy, but also super relaxed because there's no right or wrong way to throw together a collage, which is what I'm doing here on the title page. I'm still currently abroad, so firstly, I apologize for the wonky angle. It's the best that I can do without a tripod. And secondly, when I packed, I brought like sets of stationery with me that I knew I could use for themes and whatnot. I'm not 100% sure how long I'm going to be here still, so I'm glad I had enough stuff to throw this theme together. I love bees, like, a lot. I'd really love to keep bees someday. I think that they're fascinating little critters. And as a result, I seem to have acquired a large collection of bee-themed stationery. So I've got paper, stickers, a lot of washi tape, and I managed to bring at least a little bit of most of that with me. Just, little samples that I could use here. So that's what you're gonna see me be using throughout this video. It's not stationery from anywhere in particular, it's not a collection or anything, but just sort of an amalgamation of stuff from my stash, so to speak. And as for this other page next to the title page, you know that I don't really like adding quotes to my journal. Any words that I write in my notebook I prefer to be mine, so you will see me stamping out some things with my little letter stamp set, and I'll show them to you when they're all finished, but it's actually a song that I wrote about this time last year, actually, and the song in general really ties into the whole theme because it's about bees, and also there's an underlying theme regarding mental health, which will become more clear with some of the later spreads later in this video that I'll be doing, but long story short, I've been on antidepressants for years now, but my prescription ran out since arriving in the UK, and I'm working on getting it filled, so like no worries, but as I sort of start to run out and there's sort of a wonky transition, I've been increasingly aware of my mental state, just trying to keep an eye out for overactive anxiety or depressive episodes, because being aware of that kind of stuff helps me to fight it off pretty well. So I took extra care this month in adding things to my setup that will allow me to make sure that I'm taking care of both my mind and my body, as well as keeping tabs on my mental state. And I'll talk about that more in just a sec. But the song that I'm using here is largely about the sense of anxiety that I feel in regards to being unemployed at the moment, not knowing how to just exist without participating in capitalism, and how it's all too easy to tie your self-worth to your productivity. And I write songs for fun. I don't typically even share them. This isn't some great work of art, just something personal that I really felt like fit with where I'm at right now, as well as really fit with this theme and what I was going for this month. Anyway, the lines that I used were, I guess I'll sing them to you. We say that bees are busy and we think we can relate, but bees don't get paid to pollinate. And I realize on the paper there that I spelled pollinate wrong originally, and I do go in and fix that before I stick it down to the page. Don't worry, I promise. But yeah, this whole setup really got me thinking about the ways in which my bullet journal interacts with my mental health as well, and I think I'd like to share some of my personal experiences on the subject. And so first of all, obviously this is, my personal experience. I can only tell you what works or doesn't work for me. I have anxiety and depression, and that looks differently in everyone. so some of the stuff that I find really helpful might be more draining than beneficial for others. And secondly, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just a girl who thinks we should probably talk more about mental health and is willing to share some of her experiences. So that said, let's go page by page. Right now I'm setting up my monthly calendar. Something I find is a huge problem in my life is that I'm very forgetful. Poor memory is often linked to anxiety and depression, and oh boy is my brain just a big old sieve full of soup because of it. And forgetting things constantly is not only really annoying, but really stressful, and a lot of my anxiety comes from not knowing what a situation is going to be like, or not having any control over anything. So I find it so helpful to have a place where I can jot down things weeks in advance, because if I don't, I'll forget about them, and then they'll suddenly catch me by surprise, and then I'll get anxious because I wasn't mentally prepared to go to the dentist today, for example. So having things written down in a place that I look at and reference often relieves so much stress for my cluttered sieve brain, because I don't have to try and hold dates and times within the soup that's like draining out of my brain holes. I maybe lost the plot there a little bit, but I think you get the gist. Forgetting things makes me anxious, writing them down helps. And this goes for my weekly spreads as well, which I don't actually set one up in this video because it's just a series of lines. They're not super interesting. I keep those really simple because really it's just about having a simple place to write things down. If I have multiple projects that I'm working on, I'll get so stressed out about trying to remember when I'm planning on doing what. But just having that space to write down one or two things that I want to do each day not only lets me know roughly what to expect from that day and from the week, but also helps me to spread my tasks out so that I don't get burned out trying to do everything at once. I'm in a weird place. This past year, I've been in limbo regarding my husband's visa, moving to the US, and also there's been a whole entire pandemic, so a lot of my life has been outside of my control. And that's very scary and stressful. So being able to look at the week ahead and know what I have going on and choosing what I do when gives me some control over the world around me in a way that keeps me from having a sieve brain-induced panic attack on a regular basis. And also having a space to physically write things down makes them more real for me. I know some people absolutely love digital calendars, but when I just type something out on my phone, I will not retain it. I need to write things down physically or it just disappears into the ether. Anyway, thanks calendars for having my back. And speaking of calendars, I'm about to draw a bunch of tiny ones on this page, because it's my habit tracking page. Tracking habits is a weird one for me, because tracking some kinds of things just does not work. While tracking other things works for me very, very well. For example, I've tried tracking whether or not I've drawn every day, and on the surface that seems like it's fine. But I have so many other creative endeavors that taking time every day to sit down and draw, while I know it's good practice, ends up being more creatively draining than it is honestly worth. Because I end up feeling like I'm only drawing to tick off the box and not so much because I want to. So instead, I've switched to tracking whether or not I've done something creative every day. And this is much more vague, so things that take creative energy like editing podcasts or videos totally counts for that. So I feel less pressured to force myself to do something just for the sake of it, and instead feel free to try new things and experiment, explore various mediums, while also knowing that if I spend a day working on a podcast, I'm not depriving myself of quote-unquote valuable drawing time, you know? I've even counted things like baking or cooking as my creative activity for the day. So it's much less about doing specific activities and more about encouraging myself to do a variety of things that will be beneficial to me. So that's typically how my trackers work. If they're too specific or too needy, I guess, they do more harm than help. But when I use them in a way that works for me, oh gosh, they're so great. They're so great. They're a great way to check in on myself, to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. The things that I'm tracking this month, for example, are, aside from creative endeavors, doing stretches at least once a day, going for a walk or going outside is kind of lumped into one thing, and then reading. And reading seems like kind of an odd one because it sounds really specific, but it's not really something that I feel super pressured to fill in every day, and also I use it more as good bedtime habits than actually spending time reading a book. It's more of a reminder to spend less time looking at screens before sleeping. And this month I've added a new tracker. I want to drink more water, so I've added a water tracker just to see how often I finish my water bottle, and this one I might end up putting multiple dots for how much water I've drunk, more as just a reminder than something that I'm forcing myself to do, because I don't drink much aside from water normally anyway, so it's just kind of a reminder to myself to stay hydrated. And that's all that trackers really are for me. They're reminders to do things that will be good for me. It's helpful because I like ticking boxes and making neat, satisfying charts, but it's no biggie if I forget to stretch one day. And it lets me know if I've forgotten to stretch for a week straight, so I know that I should probably try to do that. It's a system that for me encourages healthy habits and can greatly improve my mental health, and I think that that's neat. And the page next to the trackers is just my media page, and this is where I write down what I've been watching, reading, playing, etc. And that's the thing that really comes back to the Civ brain problem. I like to remember what I've been enjoying. If I don't write it down in a few weeks, I'll probably forget that I was watching DuckTales or whatever. I sometimes don't finish shows that I've really been loving because I just forget that I was watching them. So I glance back at these every so often just to remind myself of things that I like. And this final page is something that I haven't done for a long time. I'm making a mood tracker. I've tried mood trackers in the past, but they never really seemed all that helpful for me. Like maybe if I were having more varied moods, but my meds usually keep me pretty level. And the color gradient style of marking your mood on a scale of good to bad never really seemed that helpful to me. But since I've been in the UK and my meds have started running out, and it might still be a few days before I can get them, I've devised the system that I think will work for me. I've made a bunch of honeycomb shapes using a stencil that I made, and in addition to coloring them based on my mood, I'll be jotting down a couple of words on how I was feeling. So instead of just saying that I was having a bad day, it'll also say whether or not I was sad, frustrated, lonely, and I didn't think about this until after I filmed, but I'm absolutely also going to add in a little flip out page between these two pages to jot down why I was feeling whatever I was feeling. And that'll mostly just be used for sort of extreme days, like a little note on the side to say that I was feeling frustrated because I don't know how much longer it'll be before my husband's visa gets processed, or that I was in a really good mood because I was really enjoying some art that I was working on. So that goes both ways, and it's a little bit more work, and since I've not tried this method before, I'm not sure how well it'll work for me, but this seemed like a good time to try it out. My goal with this is to understand where my feelings are coming from so that I can better address them, or otherwise avoid things that may be affecting me negatively, while encouraging myself to do things that improve my mood. I'm pretty sure that I'll have a refill of my prescription by the end of the week, but just in case, this would be a pretty effective method for me to deal with my mental health without them. It's not a cure-all by any means. I mean, not much could be, but it'll be helpful in understanding my mental state and addressing it head-on. And this final page is one for nice things and reflections. Reflections I do at the end of the month, pretty simple, self-explanatory, and my nice things list is a very casual gratitude log. I don't hold myself to writing something every day, but I try to make the effort of jotting things down every so often that make me happy, as a way of trying to focus on the positive things in my life rather than letting myself dwell on the negative. And I think that makes more of a difference than you'd think. And it's not just about like, lol, just think positive or whatever toxic positivity people like to pass around, but it's more about reminding yourself that there are good things. Having a list like this to look at when you're having a bad day is so nice. It's so reassuring to know that whatever terrible thing is happening at that moment probably won't last forever, because look, this time last week you made lemonade from scratch and that was really nice. And the act of writing out things that make you happy or, have a positive impact on you can really start to train your brain to look for those kinds of things rather than dwell in the overwhelming list of bad things going on around you. And none of these things will fix your problems. None of these things have fixed my problems. I still forget things. I still dwell on frustrating realities that I have no control over. I still forget to drink water. And sometimes I still have a minor breakdown because I don't want to call the doctor even though I know it'll be good for me in the long run, but right then it seems way too scary for no real reason. But even so, a lot of these things still help me personally in little ways. They make me less anxious, they make me more motivated, they remind me to take better care of myself, and that's all I can really ask for. So here's the final flip through. I hope you found this insightful or at least interesting. Let me know in the comments if any of the journaling stuff has been helpful for you, or if you find it just didn't work at all. I'd love to hear other people's perspectives on this stuff. Thanks so much for watching. Pachoo, pachoo, pachoo.